everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be an overall review of Superman and Lois Season 1. Now there'll likely be spoilers in this review, so if you haven't watched all of the series yet, I advise you to go away, catch up with all the episodes, and then come back to this overall review. You can also catch up with reviews of both the season premiere and finale episodes of the series, and I will leave the links for those videos within the description as well. Now when it comes to Superman and Lois, when it debuted earlier this year, it was the latest addition to the ever-expansive Arrowverse, consisting of course of shows such as Arrow, Supergirl, The Flash, Batwoman, Black Lightning, and most recently Stargirl. Now Superman and Lois had the distinction of broadcasting both on HBO Max as well as the CW network. Now many fans had highlighted the show when they watched the trailers that the show seemed to have a higher budget than many of the other series on the CW. Now this version of Superman, played by Hoechlin, had already made appearances in the Arrowverse with Supergirl Season 2 premiere and later on in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, and so did Lois Lane, played by Elizabeth Tulloch as well. Now after a long history of Superman interpretations, Superman and Lois offered a different take by having Clark Kent and Lois already married, Lois knowing his identity for a long time. We had the added dynamic of them having two teenage sons, Jonathan and Jordan. We learned that Clark's mother was struggling to maintain payments for the farm in Smallville, and after that she shortly passes away. Clark and Lois have to move to Smallville after both being sacked from the Daily Planet. Clark is fully established as Superman and the world's protector, eventually revealing his identity to his sons, who cope with that revelation in many different ways throughout the series. We see that Jordan starts to develop superpowers whilst Jonathan doesn't. We follow the sons' typical teenager dilemmas in college, their various relationships, trying out for the football team for example, getting drunk at parties, all at the same time having to cope with the fact that their Superman is their father. Now things get more interesting when the main antagonist of the show, Morgan Edge, who enters as a company CEO, acquiring the majority of land and properties within Smallville under the guise of helping the community, providing them with more jobs, but we later on find out that he's carrying out experiments on civilians and trying to turn them into Kryptonian super soldiers. Now the real story arc that hooked a lot of viewers was the presence of John Henry Irons, who in the beginning appears as what we many perceived as the identity of Lex Luthor or Captain Luthor. Emerging in a high-tech cyber suit, we see that Irons has come from a future of an alternate reality where Superman turned evil and went on to destroy the world. Irons arrives hoping to prevent the same scenario happening in this reality. Now for me, Superman and Lois was surprisingly strong and compelling in its first season. This was very much of a grounded take to an extent of the mythos. It very much had the same heart and soul and emotional resonance and optimistic tone that we saw primarily from the Christopher Reeve films and especially Smallville, the successful CW series which ran for 10 seasons. There are so many echoes, particularly of that show, especially in the first couple of episodes where we see the family readjusting to their life in Smallville, and we get that real sense of family and togetherness, as well as the many dysfunctions and arguments that we see primarily in the first 4 to 5 episodes of the show. Now despite the family orientated story, we still get plenty of Superman action, and the effects for the most part are quite strong throughout the show, relating back to the obvious larger budget that this show had over the previous CW shows, and we do get very similar cinematic thrills to the Man of Steel movie. Now the biggest reason for me why Superman and Lois works is because of the Superman interpretation itself. Now when Tyler Hoechlin first appeared in the Supergirl series, the reaction was very mixed. He had that much more of an upbeat personality that the character should have, with a far more suitable and supportive dynamic and relationship with Supergirl, but he was far more slender in build compared to both Christopher Reeve or Henry Cavill, and I wasn't completely convinced that he was strong enough to warrant his own show. But having watched this series overall, it's clear to see that Tyler Hoechlin has proved to be a very strong version of the character, conveying that earnest, stoic, proactive and positive personality that should be associated with the character. This is a Superman that you can believe in. We are clearly convinced that he wants to save the world. There is a conviction in both of his beliefs, and he has that resolve in doing what's right. Whereas in previous versions it was a burden to be the Earth's protector, this is a Superman that is fully accepting of that role. To an extent, in terms of his character, this is more like the Superman that we should have got in the failed DCEU movie universe. Now perhaps I'm overselling it a bit, but Hoechlin's performance was extremely important in debunking the modern and current perception that Superman has to be darker or deconstructed in order to be relatable or interesting. I always felt that that kind of mindset and mentality highlights a lot of people's insecurity in seeing a Superman that is hopeful and inspirational, and many people want to tear him down and deconstruct him in order to validate their own doubts and fears, and Warner Brothers foolishly used that direction for their character within the cinematic universe. Now Superman and Lois as a show, they really saw and appreciated the true value of the character, and Hoechlin's performance and portrayal is truly great and a reminder that Superman is fine as he is. He doesn't need to be modified, he doesn't need to be changed. Okay, you can make little tweaks and adjustments to modernize him in this current entertainment climate that we are in, but for the most part, in terms of the nature of the character, he really should be kept and stay true to what he is, and that's what I saw a lot within this version of Superman and Lois. Now Tyler Hoechlin is equally complemented by Elizabeth Tulloch, or Bitsy Tulloch as she likes to be called as well, who is absolutely terrific as Lois Lane. As Lois Lane, she's resolute, tough, and it very much has that no-nonsense side to her personality, especially whenever the teenagers gets in trouble. She truly lets them know, and many of those scenes were very intense but very funny at the same time when they were getting a real tongue lashing from Lois Lane overall. But despite this tough exterior, Lois Lane still has very much of a likability and warmth about her. This was very apparent in one particular episode, I think it might have been the 11th episode throughout the series, where we learn of her previous miscarriage and we really feel her pain and regret about that experience. It's a fantastic performance from Elizabeth Tulloch. Now, in the beginning, I think many were concerned that this would be another example of having a stronger, typically angry and complacent female character superseding and talking down to the male character, but that wasn't necessarily the case. Many fans were concerned about the woke sensibilities infiltrating this dynamic of the show, but what was so refreshing and another key ingredient as to why Superman and Lois works was really the relationship between Clark and Lois. Yes, they disagree over certain matters, but they always come together and work things through. This is very much of a collaborative relationship, again proving that the current perception is wrong, that you can have a relationship between a man and a woman who can work together in harmony for the most part. And both Hoechlin and Tulloch have simply amazing chemistry together throughout the show. The greatest achievement that they managed to do as a on-screen duo is convince us that Lois could fall in love with Clark Kent. Now, in most interpretations, it's Superman that she loves, not Clark. Clark is more of a big brother or a surrogate brother. But in this series, you truly believe that Lois can fall in love with Clark. Especially in the episode, again, it might have been the 11th or 12th episode of the series, where we get an amazing flashback seeing the origin of their relationship. So in the beginning, we learn how they meet together for the first time in the Daily Planet, and we get those scenes earlier on when we see Lois and Clark talking together as Superman. And over the time, we see how their relationship develops, and it's very much of a beautiful and heartwarming passage of events where we truly believe that Lois can fall in love with Clark. Clark is not necessarily the more clumsy, uncoordinated version played by Christopher Reeve. He's much more of a sterner, honest presence, and you can see the connection between the two personalities. It's a wonderful performance from all of the actors. I liked Sam Lane, played by Dylan Walsh, as Lois' father. He was head of the DOD, which is basically the military presence within Smallville. Now, in the beginning, we see he's very concerned by the potential threat of Superman. We learn that he's got various contingency weapons within the DOD base, but still he's overall working with Superman. We have those earlier scenes where he's trying to outline to Lois that this was always going to be a big concern, being married to Superman, and maybe the relationship wouldn't work because there would be that eventual choice that Superman would always have to make in terms of protecting the world and having his family as a second priority. But over the course of the season, we generally learn that Sam is very concerned about his family as much as safety of the world, and we learn towards the end of the series that he makes that decision much more to be closer to his family and really makes that priority and choice. And it's a very good performance from Dylan Walsh. I also liked the introduction and involvement of Lana Lang, who we all know in classic Superman stories was the first real high college sweetheart girlfriend of Clark Kent, and in this interpretation we see that she's married to Carl, who is a firefighter. And in the beginning, Carl is very much of a supporter of Morgan Edge. He likes the fact that he supports the community in providing their jobs, but over the course of the season we learn that he becomes one of the test subjects in Morgan Edge's experiments, and he gets a backlash from other communities because of that connection. And we get a good solid storyline involving Lana and Carl and their family and their daughter as they struggle to really adjust to life when people are against them. The community was once their friend, is now very much fearful of them, and the show also managed to keep them very much involved in the events. Very much when we come to the season finale, we see that very much Lana and Carl involved in helping out the Smallville residents and really having a prominent role alongside the more integral characters of Superman, Lois, John and Sam as well. So a very good interpretation of Lana and Carl as supporting characters throughout the show. The most compelling arc of the season was indeed the John Irons future arc. Now, I was initially worried by many people when we heard the initial plans for this character, where it was very hinted that he was playing the iconic version of Lex Luthor. We thought this is yet another example of race changing a classic iconic character. It raised the obvious concern as well, because we already had a current Lex Luthor in the form of John Cryer in the Supergirl show, and Superman and Lois of course had joined together in taking a place in the same universe as all the other Arrowverse. But of course it didn't work out in terms of that play of events, when we learn the true identity of John Henry Irons playing the classic character known as Steel of course. And this story was handled for the most part really well, giving us some stunning scenes of the alternate future where we see the evil Superman dressed all in black taking over Metropolis and killing Lois when she's given a broadcast about the Kryptonian's presence. And even more heart-wrenching was the fact that we learn that the alternate version of Lois in this future was married to John as well, and they had a daughter as well. So we get a lot more of a tragic backstory, and he's very much of a wounded character. Irons initially is very determined to kill Clark, but eventually becomes an ally, and they have a very good combination. And throughout the last 3 to 4 episodes, it's very much of a double act between both Superman and Irons, and we see some great scenes, particularly in the closing finale where they're working together and taking on the certain soldiers that have been taken under control of Morgan Edge. We get some fantastic action set pieces, and I think it's a very good dual act that we will see consistently played throughout the second season, I'm sure. And just again to remark on the fact that Superman and Lois, for all its serious tones and grounded aesthetic, it still very much embraced the real brightness of the Superman lore and mythology, and this was emphasised no more in the beginning premiere episode, where it faithfully created that iconic Action Comics first issue when Superman is in the original costume with the black S emblem and the red shorts lifting up the green car. So very much an understanding again by the writers of how to appreciate the Superman legend overall. Now, despite its many merits, there were a couple of issues throughout the show. I think primarily for me this surrounded a lot around Jonathan and Jordan. Now, the characters themselves are very well performed by the actors, but there were certain points throughout the show, particularly in the first 5 to 6 episodes, when the overall narrative of the Sons in the beginning are constantly angry at Clark for not telling them everything, lashing out at him and then apologising. It became a bit repetitive. We would have multiple scenes where they would get a strict talking to by both Clark and Lois, get sent to their room, and then there'll be a coming together at the end of the episode. Now, of course, they are teenagers, so yes, they will have their issues, and yes, we do have to play that out. And of course, this being a CW show or connected to the Arrowverse show, that was very much a fabric that runs right through all of that particular shows within the universe, where we very much play on a much more of the teen angst, the soap opera dramatics that a lot of fans don't particularly like all the time. But at times both characters became a bit over complacent and slightly annoying, particularly in the first 5 to 6 episodes. And it came a bit frustrating that they weren't mature enough to appreciate Clark's position and the fact that hiding his identity was in many ways in order to protect their own safety. But gladly this issue wasn't as apparent in the season's second half, and they managed to keep both Jonathan and Jordan prominent throughout the show, particularly with Jonathan when he wants to help up more in the DoD's handling of the issues within Smallville, and in particular when he wants to help John in constructing the armor and taking down the Kryptonians. In the final arc of Morgan Edge, who is revealed as Clark's Kryptonian brother, trying to generate a Kryptonian army, and we get some backstories in terms of his Kryptonian father as well, and he ends up becoming the Eradicator. And this story felt a bit rushed at times. Now we get used to the suspicious CEO for the first half of the series, and then all of a sudden we shift to the more Kryptonian identity, and I don't think it was quite developed as smoothly as what the John Henry Irons arc was. There was a bit of a scattered retelling of this story overall, and it wasn't quite as convincing, particularly when we take Clark and he's assimilated for General Zod at certain points. And as I mentioned in my finale review, we have that narrative where Lois has to infiltrate Jonathan's memories in order to wrestle away the influence from the Kryptonian father as well. So some of it wasn't quite as well handled as what the previous elements within this series were, and I think overall this final arc just needed a bit more development. Now despite the finale itself being a truly spectacular conclusion, there were a few rushed elements throughout this show that I went into more detail throughout the particular episode in that review, but overall it brought everything nicely to a close, bringing all the arcs together very nicely. We did have a small cliffhanger where we saw the appearance of John Henry Irons' daughter. Again, maybe it didn't quite have the impact of the first season finale that what it should have done, but overall it did raise some interesting issues and questions that we will see throughout the season 2. So overall, if I had to give a score for Superman and Lois, I would give it an 8.2 out of 10. Without doubt, one of the most strongest first seasons throughout all of the CW shows. Again, very much embracing that optimism and brightness that we associate with the character. And really, again, I think the biggest achievement of Superman and Lois was giving us a great modern day Superman and Tyler Hoechlin, very much proving against that theory that Superman has to be dark, evil, intense in order to be relatable and in order to be able to cross over to a general audience. There were so many CW detractors ready to rip this show apart, but they were able to connect with this Superman, and that's one of the biggest achievements throughout the show. Now, many people have compared Superman and Lois to the other Arrowverse shows, stating that this is the best CW show. I don't think it's quite an apt comparison at this point, because there's very much a freshness and a novelty in Superman and Lois because it's season 1, whereas the likes of The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow and Supergirl are all in their 6th and 7th seasons. And when a show goes on for long enough, you're going to have very much peaks and declines. So I think we should hold back just before celebrating Superman and Lois as the best CW show overall. It will be interesting when we get to season 2 and season 3, now that the fresh novelty is gone, now that the show, which exceeded expectations very much so in its first season, will now have to meet the very high expectations of the second season. So it'll be interesting to see how people's attitudes change in terms of the second series of the show and how that plays out overall. Would it still get the high praise that the first season has got, or will there be a decline in the storytelling or a decline very much in the attitudes towards the show? We will wait and see overall, but no doubt about it, in terms of adapting Superman in a classic way, this is a very much a step in the right direction, a great Superman and Tyler Hoechlin, and proving overall that Superman can be done right in the modern day era. So those are my thoughts and feelings on the overall season review of Superman and Lois season 1. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What were your thoughts on the show? How do you think it compares to the other CW shows? And would you like to see a connection, which I'm pretty sure we will do in seasons 2 and season 3, to the other Arrowverse shows that are left existing? Will we indeed see Tyler appearing in the season finale or the series finale of Supergirl when that appears? And will we be seeing Tyler Hoechlin Superman become much more of the leader when we continue with the ongoing likes of The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and the up and coming Naomi show, along with Stargirl as well? So many interesting questions going head forward for a very strong and compelling series in Superman and Lois. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content and reviews like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.